carving in the close-grained yellow wood of the puna is exquisitely done. I recognized the standard patterns of the islands, the shark's teeth, the dropping water, and the intricate tiki tangata. The significance of the peace adze was religious and ceremonial. The story goes that when, at the end of a period of fighting, two Magian clans decided to make peace, the adze played a leading role in the attendant ceremony. A handful of earth was dug up with its head to show that the ground might now be cultivated, and the people were told that they might come and go unmolested, freely as the air through the window-like openings on its sides.
Tari had real adzes as well,
The tools with which trees were chopped down and canoes hollowed out, stone implements of a perfection I have never seen elsewhere, carved out of the basaltic rock, hard and close as steel, smooth by processes at which one can only guess, sharp and symmetrical as the product of modern machines.
The Marquesian curiosities interested me most of all.
Relics of the dark valleys which harbored the most strangely fascinating of all the island people. There were ornaments of old men's beards arranged in little sennit-bound tufts,
Crinkled and yellowish white, baked clubs of ironwood,
elegantly carved and smooth, with countless oilings, ear pendants cut in delicate filigree from the teeth of sperm whales, grotesque little wooden gods, monstrous and bizarre ceremonial food bowls of tamanu, adorned with the rich and graceful designs of a culture now forever gone. One felt that the spirits of forgotten artists hovered about the place,
beckoning one back to days a century before Melville set foot in the valley of Tepi,
to scenes of a strange beauty on which mankind will never look again. Some day, perhaps in a future less remote than we like to fancy, Nature's careless hand may once more set the stage for a similar experiment, but the people sequestered in these gloomy islands will be of another blood, and the result can never be the same. The Marquesians themselves, if one is to believe the students of antique mankind, were the result of a racial retrogression. Their continental forebears knew iron and pottery and the culture of rice, things lost in the eastward push which brought them to the 9 islands of Eva. One curious trinket, labeled Fatu Hiva, caught my eye, a squat little figure, carved in a sawed-off length of yellow ivory. I examined it closely. It had the air of being at least 100 years old, and the concentric rings of the section showed it to be the tooth or tusk of some large animal. Where could the Marquesian carver have obtained such a lump of ivory on which to exercise his skill? Could it be possible that this was the tusk of an elephant, carved not 100 but many centuries ago, and preserved by the people of these distant islands, an immortal relic of the days when their ancestors left Persia or the Indian hills? I looked again. It was large enough to be part of a small tusk, but the section was flatter than any elephant ivory I had seen. What could it be? Not the tooth of a hippopotamus, it was too large for that. Not the sort of a narwhal, which shows a betraying spiral twist. Then I thought of a walrus tusk, and the story seemed clear. 75 or 100 years ago, some whaling vessel, after a venture in the northern ice, must have sailed south and put in at Fatu Hiva for water or wood or fruit. They had killed walrus off Cape Lisburne or in the Kotzebue Sound, and as was the habit of whalers, some of the tusk had been kept for scrimshaw work. Knowing the Polynesian passion for ivory, in Tonga it was death for any but those of the highest rank to take the teeth of a stranded sperm whale. It is not difficult to imagine the rest. A lantern-jawed Yankee harpooner, perhaps, trading his walrus tusk for a canoe-load of fruit or the favors of an exceptionally pretty girl. I was examining a paddle from Manihiki, a graceful, narrow-bladed thing, carved out of porcupine wood and set with diamonds of mother-of-pearl, when Tari came in. "Pretty paddle, isn't it?" he remarked. "You won't find a more curious one in the Pacific. Notice the way that reinforcing ridge runs down the blade from the haft. Everything has a meaning in primitive stuff of this sort. The original pattern from which this has descended probably came from a land of little trees, where the paddles had to be made in two pieces, blade lashed to handle. Look at the shape of it. More like a Zulu assegai than anything else. It is a weapon primarily. A thrust of it would kill a naked man. The Manihiki people spend a lot of their time in canoes on the open sea, after bonito by day and flying fish by night, and these waters swarm with sharks. They have developed their paddle into a weapon of defense. The Samoans carried a special shark club for the same purpose. I asked his opinion on the disputed question of sharks, whether in general the shark is a real menace to the swimmer or the paddler of a small canoe. I heard a lot of loose talk, he said. How learned societies have offered rewards for a genuine instance of a shark attacking a man. But I have seen enough to know that there is no room for argument. Some idiot goes swimming off a vessel in shark-infested water and talks all the rest of his life, perhaps of the silly fears of others, never realizing that he owes his life to the fact that none of the sharks about him chance to be more than usually hungry. The really hungry shark is a raving murderer, dangerous as a wounded buffalo, reckless as a mad dog. I have seen one tear the paddle from the hand of a man beside me and sink its teeth over and over again in a frenzy in the bottom of a heavy canoe. How long do you suppose a swimmer would have lived? And it's not only the big sharks that are dangerous. I remember one day when a lot of us were bathing in Penryn Lagoon, suddenly one of the boys gave a shout and began to struggle with something in the waist-deep water, clouded with blood by the time I got there. A small tiger shark, scarcely a yard long, had gouged a piece of flesh out of his leg, and continued to attack until a big Kanaka seized it by the tail and waded to the beach, holding the devilish little brute, snapping its jaws and writhing frantically at arm's length. As he reached the dry sand, the native allowed his arm to relax for an instant. The shark set its teeth in his side and tore out a mouthful that nearly cost the man his life. The voice of Apuka was summoning us to eat. "Kai haye," she called. "Ari mai kaoroa." Tari's dining room was a section of the side veranda, screened off with lattices of bamboo, where we found a table set for two, fresh with flowers and damask. Apakura sat cross-legged on a mat near by. She was weaving a hat of native grass and looked up from her work now and then to speak to the girl who served us, admonishing, scolding, and joking in turn. Tari followed my glance and smiled as he caught the eye of his wife. "Probably strikes you as odd that she doesn't sit with us," he said to me. "I tried to get her into the way of it at first, but it's no good. For generations the women of her family have been forbidden to eat in the presence of men, and the old tapu dies hard. Then she hates chairs. When she sits with me she is wretchedly uncomfortable, and bolts her food in a scared kind of way that puts me off my feed. It is best to let them follow their own customs. She likes to sit on the floor there and order her cousin about. When they're finished, they'll adjourn to the cookhouse for dinner and discuss you until your ears tingle. Housekeeping down here is a funny, haphazard business. Hopeless if one demands what one had at home. Easy and pleasant if one is willing to compromise a bit. To a man who understands the natives at all, the servant question does not exist. They will jump at a chance to attach themselves to your household. The trouble is to keep them away. It isn't wages they are after. I pay these people nothing at all for cooking and washing and looking after the place. They like to be where tea and sugar and ship biscuit are in plenty, and they like to be amused. An occasional stranger, coming and going like yourself, gives them no end of food for talk. I have a phonograph I let them play, and a seine I let them take out for a day's fishing now and then. Once a month, perhaps, I kill a pig and give a bit of a party, and once or twice in a year I get a bullock, and let them invite all the relatives to a real umbakai. In return for all this, they look after my 50 acres of coconuts, make my copra, do my housework, cooking, and laundry, and provide me with all the native food I can use. It strikes me as a fair bargain, from my point of view at least. It is understood that they are not to bother me unless there is work to do or they want to see me. They never set foot in the house. My greatest trouble has been to get some idea of regularity into their